Welcome in, everyone. Christian Jackson here with a very special guest, Greg Waddell of Sleepers Media. He's our Michigan expert for today. Greg, thanks for joining me.
For sure. I am honored to be here. This is so close to the season. It's time.
I want to start with just last year's 27-10 record, Sweet 16 appearance, and then just a monster offseason. How do you just assess the start of the Dusty May era? Could it be any better than it's been so far?
It is simultaneously thrilling, and I think he has done a 10 out of 10 job while being very different than I thought it would be when we hired him. And that's not lost on me or I think most of the fan base as it unfolds. Dusty had this reputation, I think, when we got him of great guard play, a guy that would play small, invest in three-headed monster backcourts, and a lot of skill-based things, and honestly, budget-based roster building. And he gets to Michigan, and it's just the total inverse of that. It's been all front courts. It's been multiple 7-footers. This year, I'm so curious how he's going to juggle the three guys that are all starter caliber. And I think we'll probably see some jumbo lineups again like we did last year. But, I think Dusty, much like some of the other quote unquote elite coaches in college basketball, I don't think there's a one size fits all approach. I think he's looking for value wherever he can get it year over year. And I think he feels he's found that with this monopoly of big men that he can, give the ball to and do creative things with that other programs aren't doing. The fundraising aspect at Michigan is the part that's blown my mind. I mean, coming off of the Juwan Howard era, Juwan, a guy who made hundreds of millions of dollars in the NBA, kind of thought Juwan Howard would have success in the NIL era. He flopped immensely, couldn't figure it out. And Dusty May, who really wasn't paying players at Florida Atlantic at all, is now like one of the biggest spenders in all of college basketball. I would not have believed you if you told me that when they hired Dusty May, but it's arguably the thing he's done best in his 2 years at Michigan.
Pretty cool what he's done, and like you've said, how he's adapted, because the way you win at Florida Atlantic is different than the way you win at Michigan. And, as you talk about the fundraising, let's start with Yaxel. I heard a story of Dusty just not taking no for an answer from him and how he was able to convince him to not go to the draft, to get this big payday, to use him in creative ways like he did with Danny Wolf and be potentially the best player in the country next year. So tell me what you expect of Yaxel and just this fit with Dusty May.
I've been blown away by the 2 exhibition performances, and I'm really trying to follow the golden rule of not overreacting to exhibition performances. But I think if he is at his best and it translates in the jump to competition level in the Big Ten, I think he could win National Player of the Year. I just have not seen many players in my life that are as productive as him across the board, across everything. And it is a little bit box score heavy. There's players who their value doesn't show up in the box score. Everything Yaxel does shows up in the box score. I mean, the numbers per game from this guy, and through the exhibition, he had 25, 10, and 4 against St. John's, and it felt like a passive performance at times. And I understand how crazy that sounds. And mind you, St. John's is one of the biggest, most physical, athletic teams there is. I really just could not have imagined it would look this good this early. They aren't really running the Danny Wolf actions that a lot of people suspected they would. Now, that might just be because it's exhibition season. They started running completely different actions for Danny in January of last year. They weren't even doing it in November. So my guess would be this really does take on a different look to it by the time we hit conference play. But I do think it's a perfect basketball fit for him. He's on a team that has a ball dominant, elite passing point guard, but doesn't really have a backup point guard. I think there will be times he's used as the primary ball handler in half court settings. And I think he can handle that and really mismatch hunt at multiple positions.
He's so exciting. He's so fun. I think a lot of people know his name, tapped into college basketball who didn't take the time to watch him. So I think a lot of people are still going to be surprised to learn how damn good this dude is and how he's ready to play at the highest levels. You mentioned those scrimmages. I saw the final scores and box scores, some clips. What other takeaways did you have? Because my number one thing from the scores is that we're playing into the 90s.
For sure. It's been 2 foul fests, and I feel like that has been a common theme in the entire country. I don't know if it's like an officiating point of emphasis or what, but I do think just given how physical Michigan's front court looks. I mean, Yaxel is a monster who's playing the 3 half the time that most teams would struggle to deal with at the 5. Then you've got Merez Johnson, who just is seeking contact on both ends every single possession. To me, Michigan is probably going to be top 10 in free throw rate this year. They're also probably going to foul a ton because I don't think they're all that worried about foul trouble between those three with the Daimara thrown in there. It's been, they want to play fast. And I think by a mix of offensive rebounding and getting to the line, it's not that crazy for them to be in the 90s consistently this year. Mind you, they've done it in these exhibition games while turning it over at the same rate they did last year, which was one of the worst marks in the country. They weren't scoring in the 90s last year with the turnover problem they had. So it's an early good sign that if they can fix that, they could be elite offensively, but they may not fix it. This may be a staple of what Dusty May offense looks like at Michigan.
More on this front court where, like you said, is just a massive advantage for Michigan. That's going to be a challenge for teams night in and night out. You bring in a Daimara from UCLA who nice finesse on the block and a really good shot blocker, but could never expand his role with Mick Cronin, which is something that just kind of gives me pause. But sometimes like that, you just need a change of scenery. And then Merez Johnson didn't play huge minutes at Illinois, but the ability obviously jumps off the page in what he did this summer. So any other notes just about those guys and their fit here?
You know, I was really fearful, as exciting as it is that like my favorite team has these three guys that can do such different things. I was really fearful of keeping them all happy. And I realize we're 1 week into the season saying it seems like they're going to be happy. There is absolutely a world where emotionally this implodes at some point and guys just don't want to sacrifice for this. But you know, they started the exhibition game against St. John's with Mara as a starter, Merez off the bench. On paper, it's confusing why he would leave Illinois for a similar off the bench role at Michigan. I think the difference is Michigan is going to use him at the 4 a little more than Illinois wanted to this year. They are going to let him handle the ball a little bit more, especially even just rebounding and running in transition. Whether that proves itself to be a good thing or not, I don't know yet. But with Mara, it's so clear this is a dream system for him in a way that UCLA was a nightmare. I mean, you think of a Mick Cronin defense, it really is something that requires both mental capabilities on an every single play, read possession by possession basis, but also he needed to get out and hedge on the perimeter a lot and move his feet and struggle with staying in front of guards trying to turn the corner. He couldn't do it. And Mick Cronin is not a guy that's going to change his defensive system to fit his players. It's got to be the opposite. It didn't work in 2 years. I think Dusty May, like we said at the top, he will change what he wants to do to fit what's best for his guys. They've already done that by putting a Daimara in drop. And then offensively, Mara is such a special passer. You think of some of the ways they used Danny Wolf in the half court last year that just looked so unstoppable at times. They're going to be able to lean on Mara for that. He already had a couple really awesome high-low kind of cutters backdoor threaded passes against St. John's. And I really do think there's a world where the combination of playing with a true point guard in Cadeau for the first time, mixed with playing for a coach who's willing to mold systems to fit his game, could save Daimara's career and reputation with the NBA.
Really good notes on the difference between Dusty and Mick with Mara and the fit there. Because when I think of Dusty and Mick, it's like the absolute opposite ends of the spectrum of just like how they interact. I mean, I'm not in the locker room, but how they interact with their players. Dusty's like let's like the calm, relaxed, like let's talk about how it makes you like. I remember I went to a few Cincinnati games when he was the coach there, and the way that he would yell and have command of these giant players was always crazy to me. But anyways, I just think that's so interesting for Mara to have like such a different teacher, you know, in a sense of just the way they're being talked to.
100%. And from what I've heard, I mean, I cover this team as closely as I can, and I've talked to people that interact with the players daily. There is a level of just, they like being around Dusty May. They like him as a person. And I don't think you often have that with your coach. I know for a fact Merez and Mara did not have that last year. So sometimes you just need to have someone you really like and respect to refuel your approach.
100%. So Michigan also has some continuity at the 2-3 spots with Roddy Gale and Nimari Burnett come back here. Burnett, a veteran, shot the three ball really well last year, 40% on 4.5 attempts per game. Roddy Gale was disappointing for most of the season and a far cry from his 3-point percentage as a freshman at Ohio State. But Greg, against Texas A&M in the tournament, Roddy Gale wins in that game. So feel like I have a much more optimistic perspective of him because of how he ended the season. Tell me about Gale, Burnett, anything we can expect different this year.
Yeah, I think these two are going to have bigger roles than I even expected at the beginning of the offseason. I mean, I wondered if they would open the door back to Roddy Gale, similar to how they went out and sought what they think is an upgrade over Trey Donaldson after Donaldson gave them some big moments in the tournament as well. But, I think Gale is really a connector. And you think back to 2 years ago at Ohio State, he was the second option on a pretty bad team, but the numbers were very good. It was like 14, 4, and 3, and he made his jumpers. And then he gets to Michigan. He went through one of the worst slumps I've ever seen from an individual player for 2.5 months. He lost all confidence. And for him to persevere through that, falling out of the starting lineup, really out of the rotation at times, to basically winning them an NCAA tournament game, I mean, it was one of the more compelling rally around a guy moments. And I think that kind of earned Dusty May's trust in a way of like, oh, we can go through it together. And I'm still going to give you a chance and you're still going to give me a chance. And I'm happy he's back. He's a guy that can serve, as a secondary ball handler if they need him to. He can guard the opposing team's best perimeter player if they need him to. And I think at this point, with all he's been through, he's not really looking to star or play 35 minutes. He's just looking to win really at a high level for the first time in his career, even beyond what they did last year. Burnett is key to this team because they need shooting. They have to have shooting if they're going to play the two bigs with Cadeau, with Gale at the same time. Like, that fifth spot better be a sniper. And Nimari was one of the better snipers in all of college basketball last year. I think they've got a couple options off the bench that, could shoot it and possibly play alongside Nimari if you need multiple shooters out there. But they're pretty unproven largely at the high major level. And I think Burnett's going to have to be a constant for them to hit their ceiling.
Let's talk Elliot Cadeau. I'm interested to see where you take this because obviously a very polarizing player, burst on the scene, reclassified, was really good as a freshman. The not being guarded on the 3-point shot allowed him. He couldn't even play in that tournament game against Alabama that they lost in the Sweet 16 last year. Everyone in Carolina kind of underperformed individually. So I kind of want to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but like what he can do, where he is electric, getting to the basket and facilitating, is Dusty able to extract all the good from Elliot Cadeau and limit the bad, or is there going to be a lot of bad?
I am not historically an Elliot Cadeau believer, and I am going to be as objective about it as possible. It's exceeded my expectations through the exhibition season at minimum. I think there's an argument that Dusty's preferred style of play and what he's trying to pitch this team into is a perfect fit for Elliot Cadeau's skill set. He wants to play a top 10 tempo in the country. He wants to get out and run and play creatively and free. He wants to give all his players basically freedom to try things. He's got 3 different really versatile big men that are all pretty great in transition and really are lob threats that Cadeau just hasn't had. In his freshman year, he had them a little bit, but even, you think of Baycott, he wasn't exactly a lob catching alley-oop target. He was more of like a below the rim, I'm going to bully you guy. Harrison Ingram at the 4 wasn't either. I think there's an argument personnel-wise, Cadeau hasn't had what he needs alongside him to play to his ceiling. And I think this Michigan team, as long as there aren't shooting questions, has what he needs to surround him and make him the best version of himself. I was watching the game against St. John's, and him and Mara both, they were on the floor for like 15 minutes straight at one point. And they kept looking at each other, developing chemistry in real time. And I swear they would like make a good play. Mara would catch a lob and they'd look at each other running back down court like, you can do that? Like, I've never played with a 7'3" guy that can catch. And then Mara's like, well, I've never played with a point guard who can see that I'm wide open. Like, I think in a lot of ways, those two especially are perfect fits for each other. And it's going to go wrong at times because even when Cadeau's at his best, he does some boneheaded things. I mean, he's a flopper. He seeks contact. He kind of plays overly emotional at points. I think him finding a middle ground and just being steady in this system is probably the key to this season. I'm still a little skeptical we won't have the big swings and ups and downs, but it's looked really, really good to start.
Some really good points about who were his pick and roll partners essentially at Carolina from Baycott to last year playing a lot of small. And I like Withers. I think even Jalen Washington could have a resurgence. To stay on topic though, it cannot be understated that playing with Yaxel, Morez, and Mara are really going to extract. And then there's also not many coaches that could kind of sway my mind about Elliot Cadeau, but Dusty May is one of them that I feel like if Dusty is going to bet on Elliot as a success, like I don't want to be coaching from the basement and saying it's not going to work. You know what I'm saying? Like I kind of want to give Dusty a chance to change my mind about Elliot Cadeau. So I'm entering the season with an open mind.
100%. I mean, look, it was his first move. Like this Elliot Cadeau decision was made within 24 hours of the Sweet 16 loss to Auburn last year. Like I have that on record. That's what was happening behind the scenes. And, that means inherently they also moved off of Trey Donaldson, who seemed upset publicly that he didn't come back. I understand why they did it because there were points in the final month of the season where Donaldson just couldn't initiate half court stuff at all. It forced them to go heavier into Danny Wolf than they wanted to. And that's part of where the chaos and the turnovers came from. Donaldson's a fine player. He had some huge moments, but this team really needs a half court engine, especially if you're playing Burnett, who is not an initiator, and Gale, who has his own struggles at times. When they did it, I thought he was crazy. Like, how is this the first move of the offseason? You're going in on Cadeau? But every move that's been made subsequently, I think, has made it make more sense over time.
A few of these bench guys to get to. LJ Cason's a guy that you were really high on preseason last year and that definitely impressed in flashes. Does he carve out a nice role off the bench here?
He's going to have the first opportunity at it for sure. I mean, he's going to start the season as the backup point guard. He's also a guy that can play both guard spots, and last year really only played shooting guard for this team. Now, what is it going to look like? I really don't know at this point. If there is like a couple guys that have not impressed early, it's Kaysen. And he had some injuries late in the summer that I think have held him back from where they hoped he would be. He got to go to the FIBA U19 World Cup training camp this past summer and was one of the final 30 guys in contention for one of those spots. He didn't get one, but I'm really hoping, that type of just experience against some of these future NBA players has rubbed off on him. And even just from a competitive level, given him some good habits. I still believe in him offensively to the max. He can go through these hot streaks of he doesn't miss for 2-3 minutes in a row. Defensively is the question. He's a really high foul rate guy, and he's just made some very boneheaded lapses is probably the word for it. He's got some pressure on him this year in a way he didn't last year because Trey McKinney's a McDonald's All-American that's gunning for those backup shooting guard minutes. And I think they have more options to make shots alongside Cadeau than they did a year ago.
Transitioning to Trey McKinney, a guy who, from what I've seen of him, is really impressive to me. Is he purely a two guard? Could he play the one at all? And what do you expect of him his freshman year?
Early in his career, I think he's purely off ball. He's a guy that really has reshaped his body, and I think it has had some adjustment periods to it that haven't been fully resolved for him yet. At the high school level, part of what made him unstoppable was he was 50 pounds heavier than anyone guarding him. And part of that was bad weight, but he was very good at scoring with bad weight. He's lost like 40 pounds at Michigan this summer. And it's good. He needs that for his career, but he's also going through a transition right now. You can see it where none of his go-to moves at the high school level worked against legitimate, like St. John's was his first test. He's going to have to just start small. And I think in the long run, he could be a featured scorer for this team, even as soon as a year from now. This year, he's going to have to catch and shoot and just make shots. And he's been more of a scorer than a shooter in his time at the high school level and AAU programs. This team doesn't need, 5 dribbles for Trey McKinney to score. They need someone who's going to make the shots Cadeau and Yaxel make for them. He hasn't done it early. We're only 2 exhibitions into it, but his pedigree says that he's one of the best incoming freshmen as just a catch and shoot guy as well. If he can do that, he'll have a big role.
I can't imagine getting used to absorbing contact with 40 pounds less of weight. That's a huge transition to go through, but I assume if they made him go through that, it's for his best. interests. The other freshman, Winters Grady, awesome name. I know he's a really good shooter. Is he gonna get minutes here?
He's the guy to keep an eye on for me because similar to how I just talked about McKennie being more scorer than shooter, Grady's entire prep career has prepped him perfectly for this. Like he has been playing a prolific prep off of elite players for a couple years now. And largely in a catch and shoot role, largely in like a no dip, I'm waiting in the corner and I'm going to get 11 attempts tonight role. That's perfect for this team. And he looked really, really good eye test wise through this week of exhibitions. I think he is the furthest behind in the pecking order. Certainly, Kaysen and McKennie are going to get opportunities first. But if Kaysen struggles with his shot or continues being foul prone, if McKennie struggles defensively at all, I do think Grady will get more opportunities than expected. And look, the big question outside of turnovers with the entire roster truly is shooting. I mean, if Gale slumps again, if Cadeau's the same low volume shooter that he's been, it's a bad build around a team trying to play so predominantly front court heavy. Anyone off the bench that is just a 40% no doubter shooter will play on this team. And Grady might be the purest shooter of all the options on the bench.
Will we see Will Shedder in any capacity here? I mean, he can obviously shoot it, but there's just only so many minutes in the front court.
I think more than the average college basketball fan would think, because at first glance you look at this and you're like, well, he's buried. There's nothing there. They are going to play him at the 3 a little bit this year. And it is partially because he is one of the best shooters on the team. And I give Cheddar a ton of credit for reshaping his game. He came in as this small ball stretch 5 under Juwan Howard. He's one of the only 2 guys that stayed through the program's change. And he's a captain. He's really the vocal leader of this team. He's a very egoless guy that everybody loves. And I think, oddly enough, he might have a huge role at the 3 on this team behind Gale. He was basically 6th on the team in minutes. And it's just a luxury for them, too, because if, God forbid, Mara and Merez both get in foul trouble, he can moonlight and slide down and play big man still. With Mara and Merez both out for the first exhibition game against Cincy, he played the 5 for 32 minutes. That's something we'll probably not see again this year, but he's shooting it well. He's a tough kid, smart kid. And honestly, behind Kaysen, he might be in the top 7 rotationally for this team.
Wow. Okay. Anyone that we didn't get to that's going to be in the rotation or that I need to know about?
I think we hit on everybody that's going to play. It's really those 10 guys gunning for what I think will end up being a 9-man rotation to start. We'll probably see Grady just on the outside and possibly crack it later. Just for future purposes, Malik Cordell's a guy to keep an eye on. International kid, 7'2" from Germany. Reports out of practice were that he really, really caused Mara some problems early in the summer. Now, I think a best case scenario for him, like years down the line, would be like a Yannick Conan Niederhauser type, where it's just catch and dunk and be mobile and block shots.
And get drafted?
And get drafted, right? Come out of nowhere and all of a sudden be there. It's pretty high upside, but from what I've heard, they're hoping to redshirt him this year and then have him crack the rotation next year.
This is a really interesting team. Just the size in the front court, the shooting, which we'll see how that comes along in just year 2 of Dusty, the mystery box of Cadeau. There's just a lot of interesting things going on. But with Yaxel and Dusty, I just kind of have the floor is so incredibly high. I'm holding my Yaxel 20-1 wooden ticket from August. So I'm in on Michigan. I'm rooting for him. Greg, thanks for coming on and breaking it down with me. I appreciate all your insight.
Down to 9-1 now? What is it? You already moved
sure is.
Yeah.
He sure is. FanDuel had it at 20-1. He was like 10-1 on DraftKings, and it's just continued to creep up everywhere.
Listen, that's just the Christian effect, man. I wouldn't expect anything less. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course.